Hello, and welcome to Beyond Trust, developing a philanthropic ethic and practice rooted in care. This Spark Talk is presented by Ms. Foundation for Women and Aguilar Strategies. We're going to kick off our talk with quick introductions. My name is Samantha Franklin. I use she and her pronouns. I'm Senior Program Officer at Ms. Foundation for Women, and I manage the Foundation's capacity building program. What brings me to this work is a commitment to ensuring that movement leaders working for gender and racial justice have what they need to thrive and to create a future that works for all of us. Shonda?
Hello, my name is Shonda Chapman. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the Director of Innovative Grant Making and Research at the Ms. Foundation for Women. What brings me to the work, I would say, is a deep and abiding love for women and girls of color, for non-binary folks of color, for trans folks of color, for queer folks, and a belief in power and the ability to shape and create the world that we want to live and love and grow in.
And Christina, how about you?
Hello, my name is Cristina Aguilar. My pronouns are she, her, and ella. I am a movement doula for collective liberation and human rights. What brings me to the work is the loving ancestors who have blessed my path and really led me to my movement home, which is the movement for reproductive justice, where I feel like I experienced a rebirth into being called evermore, into healing work, into what it means to not only realize for myself, but for others, experiencing full and total collective liberation. I believe in helping folks be really ever more into who they have always been meant to be. And I do that with love and care and ancestors' blessings.
Thank you so much. So beautiful. You'll always put a smile on my face. So we're going to be structuring this Spark Talk as a conversation. And my colleagues and I are going to do three things. We're going to share our framework for practicing care and philanthropy. We're going to discuss how care manifests in our work. And we're going to talk about our partnership with Aguilar Strategies as an exemplar of a care-based practice. So let's start the conversation off with a question for you, Shonda. Shonda, how do you define care-based philanthropy, and how does an ethos of care show up in Ms. Foundation's work, broadly speaking?
Samantha, that wasn't a big question until you asked me the question, and then I thought, wow, it's a lot. And I think the first thing I would say is that our definition of care-based philanthropy is one that it's a conversation, it's a dialogue, and it's one that starts with an assumption that we are not caring appropriately for especially grantees of color, non-binary folks of color, who we know are on the front lines of movements. And we know that we're not caring for them because, one, we hear it from them, but we can see it in the ways that they are experiencing deep and profound burnout. Our definition of care-based philanthropy is more a call that says we can and we must do something different. It's one for me that sort of reimagines that sort of cornerstone value of stewarding good resources, and that sees grantees. It sees the people at the center of movement as our most valuable resource and demands that we be in relationship with them differently, that we hold them differently, that we support them fully and holistically, and we see them beyond their capacity to produce for us. So, Samantha, that leads me into our next question. I'd love it if you might talk a little bit about the ways that the ethos of care shows up broadly in our capacity building program.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Ms. Foundation, we've built a lot of institutional knowledge, right, around what women and girl of color leaders, what gender expansive leaders of color are holding on a day-to-day basis, where the strengths are and what the needs are as well. And a lot of that is because of your work and your leadership. One thing that we do in order to exercise care and capacity building is a very intentional selection of our partners. We look for consultants who understand our grantee partners' identities, in many cases share those identities, who get their work, who know what's going on in their communities. And the reason that that's important is because we know that when folks feel seen and when folks feel that their work is understood, that in and of itself, right, is a form of care in the relationship. So that's one thing. Another thing that we understand from our leaders is that listening and meeting folks where they're at is a form of care too. So we're always thinking about how do we build flexibility into our capacity building programming. One of the things that we've done is create space for grantee partners to state for themselves what their top priorities are, and then facilitate connections to consultants around those specific priorities, as opposed to the areas that we assume as the funder are important. And then flexibility can also look like expanding options for participation, so that leaders can make the programs work with their schedules. And then we're also looking to build out more flexibility in terms of who accesses our programs. So one of the pieces of feedback we hear from executive directors is that capacity building opportunities are generally geared toward them or toward their senior staff. But many of our leaders are interested in developing other staff, right? And they actually name this as an important sustainability practice. So we want to be responsive to that as well. And another thing that we do to be flexible is that we hold monies in reserve to make capacity building grants. We want organizations and leaders to be able to address needs that our existing programs don't touch on. Finally, we know that honoring folks' humanity is a form of care as well. So you and I have collaborated to integrate more programming that has an intentional focus on rest, on restoration, on personal ecology, because we know that wellness and rest are often areas that our movement leaders don't get a lot of support or resources around. And of course, one of those partnerships, and something that we're extremely excited to talk about, is our partnership with Christina on the Rested Leader program. So Christina, I'm going to kick it to you and bring you into the conversation. Can you describe the Rested Leader program and give our viewers a sense of what the overall intent of the offering is?
The Rested Leader program was really a dream and a vision that I have to say was nurtured and incubated for a good period of time before we offered it out to program grantees earlier this year. It really was intended at its core to be a soft landing of renewal, of respite, and of love to help counter what we know has been and continues to be the deep exhaustion and burnout that our movement leaders have been faced with. And that really came to a head over the last several years of the pandemic, the racial justice reckonings. This work was deeply inspired by the praxis of Tricia Hersey and the NAP ministry, as well as rest teachings by Octavia Rahim. And, that really looked at what the impacts of white supremacy have been on BIPOC bodies, and really looking at rest and renewal spaces as an opportunity to reawaken, to reimagine, and as Tricia Hersey says, to reclaim stolen dream space. It was a multi-month offering that had a series of very intentional drop-ins that included an interactive session every month with a guest healer who reflected rather any number of different healing modalities. So we had sound healers, we had an astrologer, we had writers and yoga teachers. We had folks who knew EFT or emotional freedom technique tapping. We also had a monthly drop-in yoga nidra rest experience that was led by myself. We also comboed in deep reflection time through this offering, and it was really intended to be a space to come and receive and rest. Finally, we offered one-on-one monthly coaching and decompression sessions for our movement folks. We really wanted to make sure that we were resourcing our folks beyond any program that they were able to attend, or even if they were not, we built these integration offerings to be a resource that could keep feeding and weaving them in the spirit of rest and renewal throughout this series.
Thank you so much for that. I'm wondering if you might talk a bit about the experience of being in partnership with Ms. and how that supported a culture of care in the work.
The program really was able to come to life and be so beautifully organic and dynamic, in large part because of the partnership that we had working with each other, really working with this team who's here with Shonda and with Samantha. We came to each other in a spirit of deep listening, deep reflections, spirit of play and joy, and at times even grief. We are movement hearts ourselves who are moving and weaving through the world in much the same ways as the folks who are in our programs. And so I feel so proud of how we were able to have a partnership that was really at its core, I think, reflecting the worlds that we were trying to create through every experience and touch. And it helped really kind of illuminate how important these integration emails were, these integration kind of follow-up and touches that we had, recognizing that it was really radical for folks to give themselves the gift of signing up for this program in whatever way that they did, and for us to keep resourcing them, whether they were able to physically show up in the space or not. We saw and really were able, I think, to sit in the spirit of the larger arc of care that we were holding, and really seeing, as I know, Shonda, you've really lifted up this idea of our people, our movement hearts being our resources, and how are we together really centering and resourcing them with the care and the love that was at the core of our program.
Amazing. Just so fantastic.
So, Shonda, I want to ask you what this partnership of this Rested Leader program experience that we've had has meant for you and for the grantees, and even what it means for the larger movement.
I think there's a way in which I didn't anticipate how hard it would be to do this work. It's a strange thing to say, but I imagine that other people can relate, where you feel constrained. And I loved collaborating with Samantha and Christina both around re-envisioning what programming that could look like, that could really be shaped by the voices and the visions of the grantees who would benefit from them, that can really sort of be infused with an ethic of love and care and power. There was a way that doing that felt subversive and it felt empowering. It both intentionally and unintentionally sort of disrupted, I think, the idea of what could happen. And I think that really started off sort of in the sort of dreaming process of sort of what it could be, the ways that the foundation invested in supporting the program, and sort of allowing the autonomy to sort of really create and shape, envision and implement. It supported some people that were in deep crisis. They were able to sort of use that opportunity to be able to be restored, to go out and sort of face the things that they had to face in the world, all while still having to sort of hold their families, their organizations, and their communities. And so I think that for me, it sort of infused me with hope, that sort of assured us, I think, that we were onto something and that we were in the right direction, and that our idea of care is critical right now.
Thank you so much, Shonda, for reminding us all that we are exactly where we need to be in this moment so beautifully.
Beautiful reminder and a beautiful reflection. Thank you so much, both of you. One of the things that I'm always thinking about as I am iterating the capacity building program and talking to our leaders is how are folks thinking about sustainability, defining it for themselves, and how are they thinking about capacity? And is that shifting through their relationship with us? And I from the feedback that I've received on this program, one piece sticks out to me very strongly. One of the participants emailed me to say that the program was everything that she needed, and that she would also be reaching out to one of the guest practitioners for additional support. And to me, it felt like there was an expansion of consciousness around what is possible in terms of being resourced around rest and sustainability. So I'm just, again, so honored to be in this work with both of you, and to have had the opportunity to do this Spark Talk together. And I think it's the beginning of a conversation and not the end. So with that, I will close this out. I want to thank our virtual audience for attending our Spark Talk. And please feel free to reach out to any of us if you want to continue the conversation. We welcome thought partnership and collaboration. Enjoy the rest of the Unity Summit, and thank you so much.